most disturbing parts of Donald Trump's phone call with the president of Ukraine, which has gotten less attention, is that one of the things the president does is ask the Ukrainian president to investigate a completely insane conspiracy theory that basically goes like this: the DNC worked with Ukraine to hack itself and then frame Russia. It is one of many baseless conspiracy theories that have bubbled up on the right and taken hold of Rudy Giuliani and the president and Trump TV and are now directly influencing U.S. policy. Jane Mayer of The New Yorker has been tracing how this type of information makes its way to the White House. And in a great new piece, she documents the invention of the conspiracy theory on Biden and Ukraine that could, ironically enough, end up bringing down the Trump presidency. And joining me now is the great Jane Mayer, chief Washington correspondent for The New Yorker. You wrote a piece this week about the sort of origins of this story that has worked its way through conservative media and the mind of Donald Trump and into that phone call. Like, where does this start, this story about the Bidens running some corrupt operation in Ukraine?
Well, I mean, what interested me was it started to some extent in the same place where a lot of the conspiracy theories started for the 2016 campaign. There is a dark money group called the Government Accountability Institute, which looks like a charity, but it's actually a nonprofit that's filled with money from one of the largest Trump supporters, Robert Mercer, a hedge fund manager. And it exists to create opposition research, basically, that they can get into the mainstream media. And that's where a lot of this began.
So Robert Mercer was a funder of Steve Bannon's and Breitbart, right? And Cambridge Analytica, and he runs this. Right. And there's a guy that works for GA, this innocuous-sounding government accountability institute, is named Peter Schweizer, right? What did he do in 2016?
So in 2016, he wrote a book called Clinton Cash, and he was working for the Government Accountability Institute and for Breitbart. And it's a book that basically tried to frame Hillary Clinton as corrupt and it's so complicated. This is the thing about these conspiracy theories, is they're so complicated that nobody with a normal sort of mind can check all the details. And a lot of them are foreign, because the thing with the Hillary Clinton thing was also, it was about Uranium One, right, which was
uranium sale, yes.
Uranium sales and Russia and Putin and you're sitting at your desk thinking, how am I ever going to check this? And you hardly can. And so it started. So there was this book, Clinton Cash, and it was created with the help of Steve Bannon and this Trump supporter's money, and Peter Schweizer, who wrote it, to get this story into the mainstream press. And it did hit the front page of the New York Times.
They partnered with the New York Times. Right? They got an exclusive look at the book, isn't that right? And they ran
The Times is very touchy about this.
They are, okay? Yes.
And they are saying, we made no deals. All I can tell you is in 2015, the year, as the election was gearing up, they mentioned the book on the front page and referred to the story that basically made Hillary Clinton looked like she was selling America's national security in exchange for money for the Clinton Foundation.
Yes, and basically this narrative gets set, right, about Clinton shady donors and Clinton shady money and Clinton shady dealings. And you hear it repeated often on the campaign trail by Donald Trump. It's boosted by the Schweizer book. And one of the points you make in your piece is they are running the exact same play. It's the literal same play in 2020.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And so I'm looking at this story and trying to trace back where it's coming from, and I think, oh no, we have seen this movie before, and the press is no better capable of screening for it, because we're really not set up to sort of screen out disinformation. And one of the things that I have to say is a kind of a work of genius on the part of Bannon and the Government Accountability Institute is they realized that reporters were skeptical of spin that seemed partisan, but that they would take dirt if there's really good dirt,
right? Like Oppo, basically.
Oppo on public figures, and so they took a look at Biden. We're coming into this election now, and you've got a president who has his own corruption issues. And so what do? They look for a way to make the Democrat look corrupt. And Biden's son is indeed involved in this sort of wheeling and dealing in the Ukraine that seems pretty seamy in a lot of ways. It's not great.
No.
But what the conspiracy theory develops is that the vice president is the one who's going to save his son by stopping him from being investigated. And that's not true.
No, in fact, it's literally the opposite of the truth. The prosecutor,
opposite, exactly.
My favorite tell on this, so the prosecutor that Biden calls to fire, right, had already put aside this case. And in fact, he was being called to fire by the entire world because he was not investigating prosecution. Right? So multiple reporters who have reported this story said, no, you don't understand. Joe Biden getting rid of this guy was, if anything, going to put his son at risk. Right? Like, it would be more likely that his son would end up on the wrong side of investigation if they got rid of this guy. It was literally the opposite of the conflict that they are alleging against.
But for 2 years, you've got these Republican and conservative operatives pushing this fake conspiracy theory.
Yes.
And you can watch, if you go back and look, and you can see how it's like a game of telephone. It gets worse and worse and worse, and then somewhere along the way comes Rudy Giuliani. And when he gets into it, it gets all over Fox. And when it's all over Fox, it gets directly into the president's brain. And then he's convinced that this phony conspiracy theory is real.
And then he's using the American state to essentially pursue it, investigate it.
Exactly. So they kind of snookered themselves in some ways in the end of the day.
Yeah, what's fascinating to me is, I think for a long time there was sort of a bifurcation in the media where the folks like the president and politicos would read the New York Times, they'd read the Wall Street Journal, and then the base would watch Fox News and listen to Rush Limbaugh. But now they all, like the members of Congress and the president's staff, the president's lawyers, they all just watch Fox all day. Like they all read this stuff. And I think they largely believe a lot of it.
Well, you can see in this whole thing, it's an incredible danger, not just for the United States, but also even in a weird way for the president himself, because he got caught up in his own echo chamber on this thing. And then the next thing you know, he's on the phone with the president of Ukraine, trying to use leverage to get him to go along with a story that the president of Ukraine knows isn't true.
Right.
And it's a disaster.
Right.
And he may get himself impeached over this.
You've written a lot and researched a lot on dark money and the way that dark money moves. And I was thinking about President Obama, after Citizens United, gave this speech famously condemning it, with Justice Alito sitting in the front row, and the justice shook his head no when he condemned the decision. And one of the things he says there is, this is going to open the floodgates for the possibility of foreign money coming into elections. And you go back and you look at that speech now, that looks pretty prophetic.
I mean, and that is exactly when Alito said no to the idea that there'd be foreign money. This is foreign money coming in. I mean, there's an FEC case that involves the two friends of Rudy's for setting up a straw donor and putting what looks like foreign money directly into U.S. elections. Totally against the law.
Totally against the law, but done through vehicles
where you can't track it. And that's the problem with dark money. You can't see where it's coming from. It's built that way.
You've also been you've done a lot of reporting on the vice president as well, profiled him. It is fascinating to watch him try to navigate this because he is directly implicated. He was the one who was sent to send messages to Zelensky. We know that. He says that he talked about corruption, which we know what that's a code word for. And yet he also is trying to distance himself from the actual sort of abuse of authority that we saw on the phone call.
Well, I mean, he has said that he didn't know what that corruption thing was about exactly.
He was just carrying a message.
He was just carrying a message. Somebody said that up until this point, he's been the vice president who wears like asbestos underwear. Everybody else is catching on fire, but somehow he's managed not. I think it's getting hot, though.
Yes.
He actually had one of his top staffers listening to the phone call with Zelensky on July 25th. And so what people have been wondering about is, though the vice president was not on the phone call himself, there would have been a transcript available that would have gone to the vice president's office. Soon after that, on September 1st, the vice president went to Warsaw and met with Zelensky. Did he not look at the transcript of the phone call before he met with him?
Right, and right now he has to essentially plead ignorance, right?
That's what he's saying. It's the better of the two options.
You've seen him also just completely unable to give any kind of accounting. He was one of our own reporters actually pressed him, I thought, quite well at a rope line at an event he did with Joni Ernst, and he just won't answer the question like, did you know the president wanted them to open an investigation of the Bidens? He cannot answer that question. It's
obviously very uncomfortable for him. So, but I mean, it's interesting to think about if he, when you think back on Nixon, it wasn't just the president who went down. It was Spiro Agnew, his vice president, too, ahead of him that went down. I mean, it could create an opening at the top that would be difficult and interesting.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Jane Mayer, who is in town tonight because tomorrow she's going to be interviewing Nancy Pelosi as part of the New Yorker Festival, which should be a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.